Seahawkers podcast. I'm Brandon Schultz of the Military Seahawkers, and joining me, we're back in our own locations, and I am joined by my good buddy Adam Emmert.
Man, what a change. This is much better not doing this from the road, especially both of us doing it from the road. That was a bit of a, I wouldn't call it a debacle, but it wasn't the easiest thing in the world.
It was not comfortable.
This was much better.
Yeah, this feels right.
Yeah, and you know the other thing that's a lot awesomer about this week than last week? Because awesomer is a word, don't worry about it. Yeah. But the thing is it's so much cooler because we actually had a game where there was like actual things that happened that we get to talk about, as opposed to last week where we were kind of like, yeah, I don't know what to make of that. And then we just kind of went off the rails. And so now we can talk about Seahawks football.
Well, I guess a difference from last week to this week is that we have a loss to talk about rather than a win. And this is where I have a little bit of trouble differentiating last week to this week. I like talking about wins. I don't as much like talking about losses. But with the Seahawks 25-19 loss to the Vikings, at least we got to see some starters out there. So I feel like we have some questions answered in terms of things that we've been looking for throughout the offseason and into the preseason.
Oh, for sure. You say that we have to talk about a loss this week, but the way that I look at it, because I'm keeping score a little differently in the preseason for myself, is that we won. Because I actually got to see guys play, do like Russell Wilson things, see Russell Wilson do that, and actually have a good feeling about some of the things that went on throughout the game in this team going forward. And to me, that's a win. I don't give a rip about the score in the preseason. I don't know if you know this. They don't count.
They don't count. You can go 0-4 in the preseason, as we found out last year, and still make the playoffs. Those games don't matter. So, yes, that part's positive. The Vikings being 2-0. Seahawks 1-1. But we did get to see some Russell Wilson, and he was out there looking like his old self. We got a reminder from the announcers that it is his first action that we've actually seen from him since he got to be the top paid quarterback in the league. And he went 6 for 9, 82 yards, and throwing it around to Tyler Lockett and Jerron Brown, and looked good doing it too.
Yeah, looked good doing it, short of completely whiffing on Tyler Lockett in the end zone, who was wide open.
Yeah.
I believe it was his last play. But, beyond that, and again, they're running vanilla offense and all that stuff, and there's vanilla defense, but you can tell straight up that the Tyler Lockett to Russell Wilson connection, that right there, is going to be as strong as ever. Tyler looks great. Russ looks sharp. The offensive line looked pretty dang good.
Chris Carson looked like Chris Carson.
Yeah, what a difference when DJ Fluker's out there, man. Like that makes a huge difference.
It makes me wonder too.
And Dwayne Brown and Justin Britt, obviously.
Oh, sure. Yeah, the one guy who wasn't the starter out there, Mike Upati. It makes you wonder what kind of difference you're going to even see once Ethan Pocic is put back into the backup role.
I don't know, but was it not encouraging to watch Ethan Pocic hold his own against a very good Vikings defensive line?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was one of the things I was looking for, is if all of our thoughts and feelings about the offensive line over the offseason was going to hold up against a good Minnesota Vikings defensive line. And yeah, like you said, it's vanilla, but you know what? Vanilla with Russell Wilson looks a lot better than vanilla with Paxton Lynch.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, the real Paxton Lynch emerged. We saw him. He's back.
And now all the people who are jumping the gun after last week going, oh, Paxton Lynch will be the backup over Geno Smith. I'm sorry, you're wrong. Geno Smith will be the backup for this team. Mark it down right now.
Well, look, we all, or I guess not all of us. I mean, I got into it with a dude on YouTube, Rot Dog, a little bit about it. The majority of us agree that the backup quarterback position doesn't much matter. That, in the history of the league, the vast majority of the time, when your starter goes down, you're screwed.
No, you said it never matters. And see, you what you really should have said is it rarely matters, because you can point to those cases where Steve Young was backing up Joe Montana, Doug Williams winning a Super Bowl for the Skins, Jeff Hostetler filling in behind Phil Simms. All these examples from the 80s that really don't apply anymore.
Yeah, 80s, 90s. But it's a rarity. Some people point to Nick Foles, right? But it is a rarity that your backup comes in and leads you to significant playoff victories. That just doesn't happen. So that I don't worry too much about it. And on top of all of that, Russell Wilson just doesn't get hurt. That's me knocking on all the wood.
I could hear it.
And so I just don't have a lot of time and effort to put into the quarterback position. I'm not trying to be mean about it. I'm not trying to be mad at the people who put a lot of time, effort, and concern into who the backup quarterback is. Just, I don't really care much about a guy who's maybe going to play a series of mop-up duty and then maybe take a knee before half, 3 times a year.
Well, I think you are embodying the Seahawks position on this, because one thing that we've seen throughout Pete Carroll's time is he doesn't seem to have a lot of time for the backup quarterback position. There's been opportunities for the Seahawks to go out and acquire a guy who would be a competent backup, and they haven't done it. Whether it's a guy like Teddy Bridgewater, whether, a guy like Nick Foles, who's bounced around from team to team.
Well, even Cap.
Right.
I mean, Kaepernick would be an upgrade over Geno or Paxton Lynch at this point.
Sure. Yeah. And they've had those chances.
I mean, just on a talent level.
So they've had the chances and they haven't done it. And whether it's for cap reasons, because they don't see the value in it monetarily to pay a backup quarterback anything above the veteran minimum, I can see why they're taking a calculated look, in terms of roster construction and making a conscious decision. Because at this point, I do think it is a conscious decision.
It absolutely is. And the reason for it makes all the sense in the world. Just like you're saying, why allocate a bunch of the cap to a position that doesn't play? And then on top of all that, I've got a quarterback. I've got a franchise quarterback and who's very durable. I understand that eventually the Packers made an investment in backup quarterback towards the tail end of Brett Favre's career.
Yeah.
And that makes sense because you're drafting an heir apparent. You're trying to be ready for the day that Brett Favre retires for real, and that's an ever-changing target if you're the Packers during that time. But point being is that's the time when you start investing like that, when you have a durable franchise quarterback. Until then, you're just taking money away from spending it on things that maybe do matter, like an extra D tackle that you could use, or, a veteran nickel corner that comes available, or whatever it is, or a trade for, say, somebody like Clowney. There's a lot more areas on the team that you could spend that money that would have a much higher impact.
Well, you bring up Clowney and the fact that the Seahawks pass rush against the Vikings, not the best. They had a touchdown where the defense was having to apply pressure in other ways, not getting it with their front four, and Vikings end up getting a touchdown. That is still going to be a concern going into the season, and even this game coming up against the Chargers, what we'll get to. But against the Vikings, you were talking about in our season expectations show that you were more concerned about the secondary than you were about the front four. Has that shifted now after 2 games?
Absolutely not. I'm still more concerned about the secondary than I am about the front four. The pressure wasn't phenomenal, but there was pressure applied, and they did a good job stopping the run. I mean, we'll get to Poona Ford here in a minute, but that felt a little like a coming out party, for somebody who was an undrafted rookie the year before, showed flashes. He has big expectations placed on him by his own offensive linemen throughout practice, where they come back out after practice and say, "Oh, Poona Ford, he's going to be a keeper." So you have guys that are able to, perform at a high level on that defensive line that maybe weren't known before or we hadn't seen develop yet. Also, too, I'm not super concerned about the defensive line when you don't have the guys standing behind them that are all-world standing behind him in our all-world linebacking core of Bobby Wagner, KJ Wright, Kendricks. We get those guys out there, and then if we're still lacking a pass rush, if we're still getting slaughtered up front, now I'll be concerned. But in this preseason game, you see back-to-back big, deep plays made on Shaquem Griffin and Trey Flowers.
Shaquille.
Did I say Keem?
Yeah.
Dang it. All right. You're right. It was Shaquille. Their names are too dang similar, man.
You just have to remember Shaquille Traquille. The 2 corners.
There you go. So, anyways, Griffin gave up the one long ball against Thielen.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't terrible coverage. It just was a really well-placed ball. The thing about what Griffin needs to do in that situation is he needs to use the sideline to his advantage. He let Thielen kind of bend that route just slightly to the inside, giving him a lot of space to the sideline and a lot of room for Cousins to drop that ball in. You got to get him pushed over to the sideline. You got to bump a little bit. You got to get it. You got to use that to your advantage. That concerns me a little bit. Trey Flowers getting a little grabby, not just on the pass interference, the following play or the 2 plays after, whatever it was, but later on in the game gets flagged for holding.
Well, and even an unflagged play in the end zone.
Yes.
Where he was on coverage.
That concerns me a little bit. The number one thing about this defense and the way that the corners are asked to play is not get beat deep, and they both got beat deep.
It is a concern, but it was probably one of the better wide receiver tandems in the NFL too. And Kirk Cousins, not a lot of pressure on him with it being a preseason game, able to drop dimes in. So I do think that there is that potential that when they go up against teams with top wide receivers, a top quarterback, that could be a challenge for them. Getting beat deep, I just don't know how, until you get to the playoffs, if you're going to run into that many scenarios. We will run into that similar scenario against the Chargers for preseason week 3. But let's talk about the positive that I know you wanted to get to is Poona Ford. And sure, that was one of the great moments of the game, especially with Ford in the game early, going up against that Minnesota starting offensive line. Had a forced fumble taken off the board early because it was ruled forward progress.
Oh, crap. That's a terrible call.
That was a terrible call. Thank you. Why? How is one person making a tackle considered forward progress stop? When you actually are in the process of tackling a guy and you strip the football, how can an official in their right mind say that forward progress was stopped and that didn't count as a fumble?
That's not the way it's been called through my lifetime of watching football.
Yeah.
Like basically forward progress ends up being stopped when guy is, catches a hitch route, right? And and he spins to try to get the first down. The defender grabs him by the waist, and they both just kind of sit there holding like the receiver's trying to go forward, and the defensive back's just holding him.
Yeah,
and nobody really goes anywhere for a second or two.
And then the dude runs in from outside of the play and strips the football out.
Right. Okay. Forward progress.
Yeah.
This was in the middle of a tackle.
This is him tackling, not stopping forward progress. There was nobody else there. It was Poona Ford making a tackle and stripping the ball.
But he was consistently getting penetration in the backfield in the run game and just being super disruptive. And was it Dwayne Brown who was talking about it earlier this training camp?
Justin Britt was the one hyping him up.
Oh, Justin Britt. Okay. And just, how he plays with leverage and because of his shorter stature and just how he's the master of leverage and all that. And what a big deal that is playing in the trenches. And I don't know. Have you heard that description applied to any other defensive lineman who happened to be dominant in the league, Brandon? Is there any name that comes to mind that people describe as a shorter guy who's super disruptive and plays with great leverage? Is there anybody?
Are we going to compare Poona Ford to Aaron Donald already?
I'm not saying he's even close to there, but he does have the potential, his top end potential is a poor man's Aaron Donald.
You're saying, the traits of having leverage and being a smaller type player on the interior of the defensive line. That's where there's some comparisons there to be made.
Absolutely. Great motor, good work ethic, has the track record. This is what makes me believe that this is a legit leap for him. He has the track record going back to college of being a big time performer in a big time program in a big time conference.
Yeah.
And coming out, he was named all Big 12 or something like that, right? As a defensive lineman. I don't know, he got some accolades as one of the better defensive linemen in college football. And you put that together with what he did last year and then just seeing that second year jump, he seems to be a guy that's making that leap.
I'm really excited about him. If the Seahawks are going to have success, I think they need Poona Ford on that interior of the defensive line, especially with Jaron Reed being out for those first 6 games. Yeah, he was the Big 12 Defensive Lineman of the Year in 2017. So for him to go undrafted, there's a couple things that make me wonder about talent evaluation in the NFL. If a guy like Doug Baldwin can go undrafted and then come into the league and be consistent Pro Bowl talent, if a guy like Poona Ford can go undrafted, and these guys weren't undrafted because they had big character concerns in their college time. No, they were good college players, and they still go undrafted. There's something that talent evaluators are missing.
Yeah, it's called measurables. That's the thing, is that there's a prototype for every position, and the prototype changes team to team. Like, everybody's looking for slightly different things, right? But, you know, the idea of taking a quarterback that's under 6 feet tall, I mean, gasp. You can't do that. And the reason why that these talent evaluators don't stick their neck out for guys like Poona Ford, Doug Baldwin, you know, Rod Smith going back in the day, right, is if you stick your neck out and say, actually, this guy's a third-round talent and he busts, you're out of a job.
Yeah.
So that's really what it is. It might not be that they don't see the talent. It's that they're too scared to attach their name to it and stand on the table.
You know, it's one thing to say, hey, this guy's a third-round talent. And when it's getting to 6th and 7th round of the draft, you know, start pounding the table like this, because you aren't going to lose your job over a 6th or 7th round draft pick. How
really 4 down, right?
Yeah.
4th round down is just roll the dice.
Yeah. How do these guys not get picked up in the 5th, 6th, 7th round?
Yeah, I don't know. It's really kind of perplexing, but maybe that's why the NFL had what's it, a 14-round draft? Yeah. Something like that back in the day?
Back in the day.
Like back in the 60s?
Right.
A 20-round draft?
Yeah.
Well, maybe we ought to go back to such things. I don't know.
I kind of like the idea of guys getting to pick where they get to go after you get through 7 rounds of the draft. But
I like it too, because we compete at signing undrafted free agents in a way that other teams don't. And we have a reputation for allowing guys who flash the talent as an undrafted free agent to unseat somebody who's been drafted much higher at the same position group and earn a spot in a job on the roster and to be featured and succeed. That is something that the Seahawks do really well, and it really helps them in the undrafted world. And it makes a big difference. You see guys like Poona Ford flash. You see people like Jazz Ferguson start to perform. And that's cool stuff.
Yeah, I think as hyped as we were about Jazz Ferguson after maybe the first game, I'm less hyped about him after this last game. But again, it's hard to really put a lot of that on Ferguson when Lynch had such an atrocious game.
So wait a second. Because I kind of disagree with you about being less hyped, less jazzed about Ferguson after the second game. Like, I feel like he put together a really strong first game.
Yeah.
And then his second game wasn't quite as strong, sure, but didn't he still perform? Did he not get open? Didn't he run good routes? Like, that's the type of stuff I'm looking at. That's consistency.
Yeah.
That's actually putting it back to back. It'd be much different if he, went out there like Paxton Lynch one week and then Paxton Lynch the second week.
Well, I guess the thing that I look at when we're arguing about who's going to be the final 2 guys on the Seahawks roster, because I think this solidified for me that Lockett and Brown are your number 1 and 2. And then you have DK Metcalf and David Moore kind of in the 3 and 4 spot. I feel that 4 is pretty solid.
Yep.
And that leaves you with 1, maybe 2 spots. They've only kept 7 receivers 1 time. And when you're going down to 6 and 7 receivers, how many times anyway are the Seahawks getting that much production even out of their 5th and 6th wide receivers? So
right.
One of the things that I've come to realize now, thank you, Cason Williams, is that when it comes to the Seahawks deciding who's going to make the roster and who isn't going to make the roster at the wide receiver spot, they have a pretty good feeling of if a guy's going to be talented and work out down the road, if he's going to develop like David Moore, a guy that they were willing to cut Dwight Freeney to hold on to keep David Moore. And now he's developed into a guy who can be the 3rd wide receiver on the team. If they feel that way about Jazz Ferguson, then I'm going to say, great. I'm glad that he made the team once it's cut down to the 53-man roster. If Jazz Ferguson doesn't make it, I'm going to say, okay, show me who's had the track record of going and having success somewhere else. I can think of one guy where they made a bad decision in terms of keeping and allowing to leave at wide receiver, and it was keeping Percy Harvin and letting Golden Tate go.
Yeah, and I think, going to team dynamics and things like that, it might not have been a bad decision at the end of the day.
Sure.
But with that said, I do think they hold on to Jazz Ferguson. And then it's a matter of not so much keeping guys on the roster or rooting for guys to stay on the roster because you think they're going to be big producers within the offense, but more so, just like you mentioned, that they're stick on the roster so that maybe if a spot opens up going down the road, that they'll be productive. I'm not sure how many of these guys, if you let them go, are going to make it to practice squad. Is John Ursua gonna? I doubt it. With Gary Jennings? No. Like Jazz Ferguson wouldn't.
I think Jazz Ferguson might make it to the practice squad for the same reason that he went undrafted.
I get it, but he's put out some tape now.
Among those three players, Ursua, Ferguson, and Jennings, I think the team, based on what they've been able to see through the offseason and based on what they've seen through the preseason, they're going to know which one to keep and which ones to get rid of.
I honestly feel like with Metcalf and Ferguson, you end up with very similar skill sets that kind of duplicate each other. Jerron Brown and Gary Jennings are kind of that way too. They're kind of the same guy. And then like Lockett and Ursua are kind of the same guy. Those quick, shifty guys.
Yeah.
Even though Ursua doesn't have the same top end speed and kind of the deep threat, but as far as being, in the slot and being shifty, I kind of feel like out of all the receivers, the guy that has the most unique skill set in comparison to the rest of them is Ursua.
Yeah, I could see that. And you really didn't. Did you pair somebody up with David Moore? I think David Moore, maybe you could put in there.
He's just kind of, he's well-rounded. Like, yeah. I don't, do you look at anything, well, other than catching contested balls?
Yeah.
Like, maybe that's his number one skill. But I don't see him as a burner. He's not super shifty. He's not, incredible route runner. I mean, he's just pretty good at everything. He's a little Jermaine Kersey.
Yeah. Maybe that could end up being to his benefit or his detriment, if they have a guy who they see a higher upside with.
Right. And then you got to factor in the idea, too, of they are still kind of searching for that guy who's going to be the punt returner. And maybe that's what makes Keenan Reynolds less expendable.
How are they going to be searching for a punt returner? We know who it's going to be. It's going to be Ugo Amadi, who had another amazing special teams play, although as the gunner going down and just lighting up one of the Vikings on the punt return.
Yeah, I've been really overall impressed with Ugo Amadi. I mean, his versatility. I mean, to me at this point, he's a lock to make the roster.
I like how you've modified his name so it isn't Ugo Amadi, but it's Yugo, like the car. And that maybe is fitting.
For sure it's Ugo?
It is Ugo.
We're sure?
It's not Yugo. I know that. It's not. He
How do you know that?
Do I need to go? I'll look up the pronunciation guide, but I'm almost positive that I saw the Seahawks put out the pronunciation guide on Ugo.
Well, then he spells it frickin' wrong. It should be 2 O's, G-O. Ugo.
Just be thankful we don't have to say his full name, Adam.
That might be easier over time.
But yeah, I think he's going to make the roster. And when you have a deep group of safeties, he's been one that's standing out among that deep group. He had Marquise Blair have some big hits through the preseason. I do think.
Yeah, and some big blunders, and now he's injured too.
Yeah, well, back spasms. Have we found out if he's going to be out for any significant period of time?
When you get back spasms, Brandon?
When you're Aaron Rodgers' age?
When you're old and you're decrepit. That's when you start to get back spasms. Not at 21, 22. That is very concerning.
Yeah.
But fortunately, between Amadi and Deshaun Shedd, I mean, I'm feeling pretty decent about the depth, that we can throw back there at safety.
You can put Shedd at safety. You can put him at corner. I love the
same
fact
with
that
Amadi, right?
That Deshaun, yeah, and Amadi playing him, potentially in the slot. So, I like those guys for their versatility on the team.
I think Shedd will be one of the sneakier pickups of the year.
And he had the 88-yard interception return. If you had any question about whether Deshaun Shedd had his legs back, you watch him on that 88-yard return, and he looks as fast as he was when he was with the Seahawks a few years back.
You bet. Yeah, goodbye. He took it to the heezy. That was great. We didn't, one thing we haven't gotten to really is the running backs and the way that went down throughout the game. I mean, Chris Carson came out and looked phenomenal.
Absolutely, yeah. 5 carries, 25 yards, looking like the Chris Carson we expected. And talk about guys that I know you've pounded the table for Chris Carson in the past as being the guy. And I guess the one defense that I would have for Rashad Penny and his -2 yards on 6 carries is that he did it behind the second-team offensive line. And
he did it against the second-team offensive line, as did Travis Homer later in the game, who averaged 4 yards a carry.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
But 2 different styles, right? Travis Homer has that style.
One doesn't.
I think Penny's style can work with a competent offensive line, because you've seen where Penny gets into space and he looks pretty good. You throw it to him on the outside.
He's a scat back. He's a first-round draft pick who's a scat back. It's exactly what I said when he was drafted. It's exactly how it's playing out. He can't run between the tackles. And okay, sure, he played behind the second string offensive line. And yes, there are dudes back there all the time, right? And so that makes life tough. There's no doubt about it. But not on one occasion, not one, did he make a dude miss and pick up positive yards.
Okay, I'm saying that I think we're recognizing that Penny has a role on the team, and it's a very defined role. And maybe that's not one that you would spend a first-round pick on, but now you know his role.
I knew it when they picked him. This is exactly what I said.
Okay.
And I wanted desperately to be wrong about this.
He is very tentative when it comes to running into traffic, whereas you look at a guy like Homer and he puts his head down and just bowls into guys.
Yeah, which is what's needed when you're playing the type of football that the Seahawks are playing. It's hard to watch, man. And look, I'm hoping that this happens, that throughout the remainder of this season, because again, it's preseason, it's hard to tell things. He's running behind the second offensive line. Fine. I hope desperately that by the end of this year, somebody goes back and plays this clip and Penny's rushed for 1,000 yards and Carson's ran for 1,500 yards and we're holding up the trophy and we jellied it down everybody's throat all freaking year long. That's what I want to happen.
Well, I think Penny could be your third down back. And we saw him in there with some pass protection. I do think he needs to improve in pass protection, but if he can be that guy that can, bump a guy and kind of get outside, and when you're in those third and long situations, I bet he can be the type of player who can pick some of those up where maybe you didn't have that in the past with, Mike Davis, where he'd just come up short. Once Penny's into space, I think he has more of ability than maybe even Mike Davis does to make guys miss.
Yeah, and he is a space player. I mean, a little I would say in the mold of Reggie Bush, but it's the same sort of running back, right? Like, you got to get him outside. Other than Penny's not even close to as shifty as Reggie Bush was. That's the thing, is he's a third down back with straight line speed. That's it.
Yeah.
He's not shifty. He doesn't make guys miss. He doesn't bowl over anybody. He can't block. I just don't. It's so disappointing. That's why I was so mad on draft night 2 years ago.
Well, I feel like we can at least move on from that and say, okay, this is his role and this is the way it's going to be. And in this game coming up against the Chargers, we'll have an opportunity now with the starters having more playing time that I think we'll see Penny in the game more behind the first team offensive line.
Yeah, I think they need to do that. Just not only to make further evaluation as to his progress, if there has been any made, but also to give him the reps so that maybe he does have that light comes on moment.
He may need some confidence at this point.
That might be it. But, when they drafted him, the big stat is that he had more yards after contact than any other back in either the history of college football or in that year, right? He had a huge year, yards after contact. But then you went back and watched the tape, and contact was considered on the majority of those yards. A dude reaching at his thigh pad.
Yeah.
You watch Carson run and those are yards after contact, not ticky-tack contact.
Right. Yeah. That needs to be differentiated. I feel like if you're going to be paying attention to those numbers in the future.
Right. So I don't know. It's a little disappointing, but we'll see what happens. You know what else is disappointing, Brandon? The idea that every single rookie is hurt. This rookie class we were all excited about, and then all of a sudden everybody's injured at once.
Collier's injured. Blair, back spasms. Yeah, I got DK Metcalf, knee surgery, and he's going to be out for a few weeks. Who else? Cody Barton seems to be healthy.
He seems to be healthy. Here's my major concern. I think that CJ Prosise is coming by and touching people. Like while they're standing on the sideline. I think he touched all three of those top picks, and now they're hurt.
Yeah, there's another guy we didn't see in this game against the Vikings.
Well, yeah, I think he's hurt.
I've just stopped looking for Prosise.
Yeah, I did that 2 years ago.
So once he gets out of the building, all injury issues, they will be solved.
I think so. Everybody's pointing to the training staff and everything. I really think that there is like a cursed thing going on there. We talked about it last podcast. Very concerned about it. So, any other important, productive Seahawk, when you see CJ Prosise in the hall, you either A, pretend like he doesn't exist and give him a wide berth, or B, you turn the hell around and just go the opposite direction.
Yeah, I've been inside the VMAC. There's alternative routes to go almost anywhere. So
absolutely there is.
You see CJ coming down the hallway. You turn around and
what's up? No high fives.
You find another way to go to where you're going. It's going to take you longer, but it's going to be better off for you in the long run.
That's exactly right.
Just got to make it through the preseason.
Yeah. Somehow, some way.
Well, one other thing that was interesting to me that stood out from this game, it wasn't necessarily what was, any particular player, but that early challenge on Adam Thielen pushing off in the middle of the field and Pete Carroll attempting to challenge it. And the announcers not having any idea exactly what's going on because he made the catch near the sideline. And so they kept going back to the replay on the sideline. One of the things that we're finding out with this ability to now challenge pass interference is that you have to have a camera on the play, on the entire play, to be able to make a successful challenge. If there aren't enough cameras covering all the action, there's no way that you're going to be able to successfully challenge a pass interference play. So Pete Carroll can't rely on what he sees from the field. He has to rely from what is viewable through the TV.
So only challenge pass interference in a primetime game where there's a lot of cameras. If you're like, if you've got the C level announcing crew and you're like on the local affiliate, right?
Yeah.
For Fox, you just don't challenge offensive pass interference in those games.
Unless it's at the point of the catch or right before the catch. It can't be as the receiver's getting open within his route.
Okay, I got you. Because that's the other thing about the offensive pass interference rule that a lot of people don't realize, and I'm still learning too. I mean, as we all go through the machinations of this, is if you challenge for pass interference. Let's say they had called pass interference on Griffin in that instance, right? And you challenge that, and they deem that he didn't pass interfere. But look at this, even further up, before his alleged pass interference happened, Thielen pushed off. That's offensive pass interference. They can go back and review that too. Anything that happens during the play, there's holding at the line of scrimmage by the DB, that can be reevaluated and now called.
I'm curious if
anywhere through there.
If they go, well, I think they would keep it to within the route though, and those particular players. If you're challenging, so Pete Carroll challenging that Adam Thielen actually pushed off on that particular play. If they go back and they find out that if they see
Griffin held at the release, would they call that?
I don't know, because it has to be. I think the rule is that it has to significantly hinder the receiver's ability to catch the ball or the defender's ability if it's on offense
for pass interference. But from what I'm saying is, and the way it's been described to me, is that now everything is reviewable between those two players on that play. Sure. So if Griffin held, say, at the release and it didn't get called, and then they go back and they look at it and they see the hold, they can now call that, as well as whatever else they're reviewing along the way.
I guess it would just have to depend on what happens throughout that play, because if Griffin holds him, but then Thielen ends up catching it anyway, then you can say, well, that wasn't significant enough to keep him from catching the pass, so that wouldn't be a foul.
Yeah, like it'd be a little like, remember a few years back, we were playing the Falcons at home, and it was getting down to the fourth quarter, and Richard Sherman was matched up on Julio.
Right.
And they ended up like calling Sherm for pass interference late in the route. And then you go back and watch replay, and Julio's doing all sorts of offensive pass interference stuff.
No, they didn't call interference on Sherman, but that was the big talking point was after the Falcons' loss, is that Sherman and Earl Thomas were there on the play, and it should have been pass interference on Richard Sherman. But it was Julio that was on the line that did a illegal hands to the face to help get off the line early. So,
right. See, that's the area where this stuff is going to get super sticky.
Yeah,
I'm interested to see how it's going to pan out.
I'd like to see how they handle it if they just wave it off and say we aren't calling anything, or if they call it on both sides, because on a third down play, if that's a pretty big difference if you say no fouls were committed versus fouls on both ends, because then you get another play for the offense.
Exactly.
So that
makes a huge difference.
It does. So that's going to, and I wish we knew how they would handle that Richard Sherman, Julio Jones situation, because I feel like that's an important case study for the NFL of what would you do in this particular situation versus not. And shoot, if they had called a defensive pass interference on Richard Sherman with Julio Jones, and Pete Carroll went to challenge it and said, what about this illegal hands to the face that allowed him to get open? Yeah, just how would you work your way through that?
I'm not sure. I'm glad we're doing it, though. Let me put it to you that way.
Are you?
Like, because after watching the Saints-Rams thing, and just over the years, just egregious pass interference calls, like changing games, like it needs to be looked at.
It needs to be egregious, though. And I don't know if the Richard Sherman, Julio Jones situation was egregious.
But here's the thing. It happened in a big moment. And riddle me this, Brandon, as a coach in a big moment who feels like he's getting screwed over, going to throw the flag or not, hoping that the official sees it as egregious. Yeah, he's going to throw the flag.
But it's just whether or not how that's going to be handled. And
yeah,
that's going to be...
And you see the coaches experimenting with it throughout the preseason.
And they should, because this is the time when you should experiment. And Pete Carroll finding out that, challenging what happened in the middle of the route when there's 4 camera angles through the entire preseason. Mm-hmm. There's not many cameras on the field for a preseason game.
Right.
You're not going to get those calls unless you have somebody watching the TV copy from the booth and seeing it clearly through that lens.
Right. So, yeah, it's fun. Adds another element to the game. I'm interested to see how it works. I'm going to say it's fun until we get screwed over by it. Then I'm going to say it's got to go.
Right.
Like, I'm sure I'll be stupid and fickle and inconsistent about it, but whatever.
Yeah. I think that you and 98% of the fans, how many of us go, oh yeah, we got screwed, but oh well.
Not many of us.
Not many.
I mean, I try, but
yeah. You try and be objective a little bit.
Yeah. But I mean, overall, I'm a 12 and this is a Homer podcast, so get over it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of homers, how the Vikings or the announcers in the game, what was with in the end zone on one of the Vikings touchdowns saying that there was a legal push off to the face mask of Jamar Taylor? When did they legalize hands to the face as long as it was to get open to catch a touchdown?
Well, I mean, it's legal if you don't like Jamar Taylor, like clearly.
How do you feel about Jamar Taylor? He might be our slot corner this year.
I don't know. I haven't seen enough to make a determination one way or another.
I think he might be it.
I wouldn't be stunned if it somehow ended up being Deshaun Shedd at the end of the day.
Well, the game against the Chargers is coming up. It's the third preseason game, which we get to see most of the action from the starters finally. And of course, it does worry me a little bit going up against Phillip Rivers, and because he always seems to just demolish our secondary. But one of the things that gave me hope, I researched this preseason game much like I would a regular season game, and and we've played Phillip Rivers. I went back and looked at the last 2 times that we played Phillip Rivers in the preseason, in Game 3 specifically. The last time it happened under Pete Carroll was in 2015. all the way down in San Diego, and Phillip Rivers played, and Seattle won that game 16-15. So see, he didn't just take off and blow up the secondary back in 2015, although it was Richard Sherman as a corner in 2015 instead. But the last loss to Phillip Rivers in week 3 of the preseason was in 2008. And I think, of course, when you think of 2008, week 3 of the preseason, we all remember Charlie Frye's legendary performance in that 18-17 loss. Nate Burleson having the first touchdown of that game.
Oh, God. Yeah, there's names I don't want to remember right now. Here's the thing. So Phillip Rivers is a beyond veteran quarterback, a master of the quarterback position. I mean, can we all... mentally speaking, like we can all agree on that.
That's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think a guy who is a master of the quarterback position is going to tear up any defense with any level of talent in the secondary that plays a vanilla pass coverage scheme?
Of course.
Do you think he's going to tear them up?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just telling you right now, going into the next pod, I'm going to give you my take on the secondary from the Chargers, from the Chargers game. I'm giving it to you right now. I'm just as a predictive, commentary on how the secondary performed.
Okay.
They got ripped up a bit. I don't know. They had one good pass breakup, and it's vanilla defense, and Phillip Rivers is going to tear that up, and so I don't really care.
How does the Seahawks offense respond once Phillip Rivers marches down the field and goes up 7-0 early on in this game?
We pound the rock with 2 straight Chris Carson runs, play action, Tyler Lockett over the top, and then we yank the starters.
But we got to go full half in this game. That's what happens in the third preseason game.
I really don't understand why that's there's no rule that the starters have to play half. I don't want to see them out there. I don't.
It's been referred to as the dress rehearsal game for I don't know how many years now. It has that moniker, and that's what we get now.
I don't care. I don't want it. Give me 2 series. 2 series from the starters on both sides of the ball, and then let's wait till week 1.
You think Russell Wilson, even with his helmet on, going into the final 2 minutes of that first half, is going to be content sitting on the sidelines after being in for 2 series?
He can have his cleats on, his helmet on, his belt on, his towel on his waist. He can be holding a football in his hand. He can be standing with 1 foot on the field, ready to run into the huddle. And guess what? I don't care about his desire to want to go into the game. You're not going into the game. You're not going into the game. Don't go into the game. You're not going into the game.
As much as we bust on the Rams, I do kind of like the Sean McVay approach to preseason. Like I feel like he has it figured out. Like the starters, they don't even have to travel.
Catfish! Sean McVay, every decision he makes sucks, and I can't stand that organization. And I'm sure it's going to backfire on him, and that whole team is going to be a dumpster fire this year. Screw them.
Okay. Now I feel like you're turning your decision around just because I invoked the name of McVay.
Yeah, anything they do, I'm just going to be against.
Right.
Like this is like we've talked about it a lot over the years, Brandon.
Put Russell Wilson in for the full game now.
Yeah, we don't put that irrational hatred into like politics where like, oh, they're just from the other side, so screw them. No. That's where I'm a reasonable, rational human being. This is where I pour in all of my irrational hate.
Yeah.
Like when it's like, team oriented, like what tribe are you a part of? I'm part of Tribe 12. And screw those freaking Rams and everything they do. Catfish sucks. And I hope their whole season is a dumpster fire.
Good. I'm glad.
My irrational hatred.
With LA being in the same city, or with the Chargers being in the same city as the LA Rams, I feel like this is a good tangent to make, especially in the preseason.
Sure. Yeah. Anytime I can just, get in on the pod and just trash the Rams, it's a great tangent.
So I mentioned Charlie Frye in that preseason game in 2008. Did you know he had one career start for the Seahawks?
Was it against the Browns?
It was not.
Nope. Oh, damn it. That was Whitehurst, wasn't it?
It was against a team that has a quarterback currently playing in the NFL that he lost to in a Week 5 game in 2008.
The Giants?
No. It was the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers.
Was Aaron Rodgers playing that year? When did he take over as a starter?
Yeah, 2008 was actually Aaron Rodgers' first season as a starter. Went 6-10 that year, and one of those wins was against Mike Holmgren with Charlie Fry at the helm.
Oh, those were the days.
That was a bad year, that last year of Holmgren.
That was.
Things did not go
sad
well.
Sad for that era of Seahawks football to go out that way. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Matt Hasselbeck's back just being gone.
He still hung in there for 2 more seasons after that, though.
I know. Yeah.
When are we going to get Hasselbeck into the Ring of Honor? Like, have we not waited long enough?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to think of all the names that. Well, okay, so there's a couple bald guys in the Ring of Honor already. I thought maybe he's being held out because he was bald.
He was follically challenged. We got to keep him out of the club.
Exactly.
Yeah, Jacob Green. Yeah, he's lost his hair. He's in the Ring of Honor.
But he had it when he played.
Did he?
I don't know.
It's
a long time ago. Again, a long ass time ago.
We need to start talking about Jacob Green more, because now that Kenny Easley's in the Hall of Fame, I feel like we need to go to the next guy to really start pounding the table for. And if the NFL is going to go back in and let in some more of these veteran players, I think Jacob Green needs consideration, because he was in an era where because he straddled from when they didn't count sacks to when they did count sacks in terms of, and he nearly has 100 just on the books. So, he's over that number.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you got to take the over. I mean, just because you could probably tally it up, right? Go back and watch game tape. Somebody could do that.
I don't know why they haven't.
I don't know. Maybe the Jacob Green Hall of Fame committee is slacking. Maybe that's what it is.
They need to get on that.
Maybe he needs to hire us to take that on.
Ooh, that can be that can be part of our mission.
There it is.
Okay. I like it. We need access now to all of those old Seahawks games. So we
That's
can
exactly
go
right. And here's the best part is we could crowdsource this crap to the little flockers. Like, we all take a game. I take a game. You take a game.
Yeah.
Executive producer Dustin Mock takes a game. Like, everybody takes a game and breaks it down and counts up Jacob Green sacks.
Yeah. And I like how we elevated Dustin Mock from associate to executive producer based on now his new things that we're asking him to do.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, with added responsibility comes more title, but no extra money. How about it's executive associate producer?
Associate.
So of all the associate producers, he's the executive of the associate producer.
Associate executive producer. Yeah, it's so it feels like we've now expended our preview into this game against the Chargers coming up, because you already know what's going to happen.
Well, how are you previewing a preseason game? Come on.
I went back to 2008 to talk Charlie Fry, so that was my contribution.
Yeah, and you know what? Hats off to you. I'm very proud, and that was good work by you. I did not put in that kind of effort.
No, but you did put in some effort in researching for this show, and I think we can talk. We did talk a little bit of backup quarterback, but we can get more into that in the second half of the show, along with welcoming some new members of the flock. And Adam, I can't wait to bring you John Davison's latest email, and I rehearsed this time.
Oh, all right. I'd forgotten about this little thing. This is going to be fun.
Getting into the second half of the show, and coming up on Saturday as part of the game against the Chargers, there's a relaunch party for the Sodo Seahawkers. They're going to be meeting up at 5:30 p.m. at the Hawks Nest Bar and Grill down on First Avenue South. So if you're in the area and want to join for some drink specials and food specials, check out the relaunch party for the Sodo Seahawkers August 24th.
Oh, you bet. You're going to meet up with a bunch of other cool 12s, be able to share your excitement for the upcoming season. That seems like it would be hard to have a bad time at.
It is hard. Anytime you're just around other fans, especially with a road game, you can't just sit at home and watch, especially if you're downtown Seattle. Got to go and meet up with your fellow 12s.
Absolutely.
Well, speaking of meeting up with our fellow 12s, we have our members of the flock, and it's growing as we get into August. This is the time of year to become a new member of the flock. And Gareth Mark is in this week, in at $3. Says, "Hi guys, have been listening for 2 years now, new to the NFL, and a longtime friend of mine lives in Seattle, so the Hawks are my team. I live it more than football over here in England, so now it's my number one sport. You guys are teaching me all I need to know about football, so here's $3. It's a small price to pay, and I'm not financially well off, so we'll try to keep this going as long as I can. Again, thank you for the great shows from Gareth.
Dude, thanks for the contribution. I mean, you say $3 isn't a lot, but you know what? When lots of people do $3, that's a lot of money. And that could go a long ways to, getting us doing this more often rather than less often.
And when we're going into our 7th season, it's people contributing to the show that really keeps this show going over the years. We didn't know that there were people out here valuing the show the way they do. It might be a different story.
Absolutely. So I probably would have bailed about 2 years ago without the social pressure of, everybody, and even Brandon himself. Like, I feel like if I quit, it would be the level of sadness for you would be like way too high. Like, I can't do that to you, bud.
I know I can talk to you on the phone and without talking Seahawks. Like, I have your phone number. I could call you and we could talk and we could do this that way. But I feel like this is more fun.
Yeah, well, for sure. And I mean, you're so invested that like you went to podcast movement this last week.
That's right. Yeah, that was a good time. I got to find out all the things I don't want to do, like be really into advertising, like all the Barstool people that were, wringing their hands over where they're going to get their money in the future as far as podcast advertising for, and not just Barstool, but NBC. And there are a bunch of networks there looking to figure out, how they're going to make this podcasting thing profitable.
So it turns out if you don't just organically rely on the goodness of the listeners and, their willingness to want to contribute, then you're probably doing it wrong. Is what I'm getting out of this?
I think you are, because how many shows have you seen go away that rely, especially corporate shows that rely on advertising?
Lots.
A lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was a big standout moment for me going to Podcast Movement. And I kind of knew that before, but it was just a little more eye-opening to me, especially being around so many other independent podcasters.
So at $3 a month, Gareth gets into the Pick'em League, correct?
That's right. And I have an announcement with the Pick'em League because we had a little bit of we found something out over this past week.
Did we?
We did, yeah. And I'll get to in a second. I have 2 more people I want to recognize because they did up their pledge. Craig Hirsch gave us a raise from 12 to 20, so a big thanks to Craig. And,
thanks, Craig.
And Leo is going to be into the Ring of Honor, up in his pledge to 1212.
Has he never been in the Ring of Honor?
I don't think so. It feels like he has because we met up with him over in London.
Yeah.
And has been, part of the show for going back as long as I can remember.
Right. But most importantly, not a freeloader.
Right.
Like all the people that listen to this for free,
We just need to give them time. They'll come around eventually.
About 2 years?
We'll wait them out.
Right. That feels about right.
But yes, and this was pointed out, I mentioned the Pick'em League, and Mike, one of our members of the flock, not a freeloader, says, "Hey guys, disaster. The Pick'em League won't let me join because it says it's full. How can it be full if I'm not in it? This is the season where I definitely win every week. Is this a conspiracy? It is a conspiracy, isn't it? You saw my 100 and something place finish last season, and you knew that this season I was going all the way to the top. Just how on the level is your Pick'em League? I know it seems like there's absolutely no way you could dictate either my picks or the final scores in each game, but if being a member of the Flat Earth Society has taught me anything, it's that facts are only a matter of opinion. I'd hate to think that someone's gotten to you both, but unless room is opened up in the Pick'em League and I go on to win every single week, then I fail to see how I could possibly conclude otherwise. And of course, go Hawks," from Mike.
So I was hoping that Mike wouldn't see through like our attempt to keep him out of the Pick'em League, because basically what happened to Mike here is we were the Tanya Harding to his Nancy Kerrigan.
Right.
We saw him as the potential star. We want to win, and so we kneecapped him with a lead pipe and didn't let him in.
I had a feeling that Mike was on track for a perfect season this year, but unfortunately, the fallout for us is that other people weren't able to join either. And so
what are we going to do now?
We heard from more than just Mike. I think because we went with the Yahoo League on recommendation, and we found out that Pick'em League groups are limited to 100 people. So
wait, how? Okay, like this is something we're gonna talk about something for a minute. Okay. Like, how many of these freaking Pick'em leagues have we tried out now that every single one of them has some fatal flaw, like one way or another? Like for a freaking Pick'em league, like why is this so hard? How is nobody on God's green earth put together a Pick'em league that just catfishing works? Like how is this so catfish hard?
I'm glad you're vocalizing it that way, because that was my feeling this week, too, when I started to get the emails coming in and people going, hey, I'm getting an error message that the league's full. I'm like, yeah, just go. It goes to figure that we can't just have a league that works where everybody can be in it.
Last year was when they can't have team names over however many characters.
It was like 15 characters. It wasn't even long.
An unlimited space. There's all the room for characters. Just like there's all the rooms for freaking participants.
Yeah.
Like, why is it capped at 100?
Why? That's a very good question.
Do they need more servers? I'll buy them 2. That ought to service the rest of the freaking country. God.
How does Yahoo not want our money? Like, can you at least give us an option so we can say, here is money, and open it up so we can all be part of it? Instead, I had to go in and make a second league. And now I have to tell people, okay, if you're in one group, you can't just join another group, because then that one is going to fill up faster. And we have to do this in a way that we can have enough room for everybody. And because I can create another group. I did that. And so now it's...
But now you got to look at who placed where in each group and then like divvy out the points.
It's not ideal.
Know what I'm getting at?
I agree. It's not ideal, but this is now where we're at.
It's beyond me, man.
I think I can download them all into a spreadsheet and then just hit sort on that spreadsheet.
All right. Well, that is a solution. Well, not as elegant of just having however many freaking teams you want in your Pick'em league.
But then the downside is that nobody can go and see where they place among all of the players.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
We almost have to, like, once you sort the spreadsheet list,
publish it somewhere.
We're going to have to, like, post it on Facebook or something.
Yeah.
So people can look at it.
Yeah. Or maybe
God, just what a cluster.
Maybe it could be an open link on Google Drive.
Oh, well, maybe. Yeah. Possibly. I don't know. You're better at that stuff than me, but like, I don't know.
And maybe we could have somebody volunteer to help with the spreadsheeting.
There's that. I mean, do you feel like Yahoo is like, well, nobody has more than 100 friends that likes to pick, football games.
Maybe.
That's more than enough.
I don't know. Yahoo's against us. NFL doesn't want to break ties.
The other site that we used, like team names capped, like you couldn't, like on the mobile app, it was hard to like scroll through stuff.
Yeah.
We've even looked into a bunch of them that we haven't used, and we're like, found the problems before we even like signed up for it.
Right. Why is this so hard?
I think, would it be safe to say, Brandon, that, I mean, just to put it out there in the airwaves and maybe like, some stupid corporation like picks it up, we would pay probably up to $500 to have a Pick'em league that just worked.
Yeah. Well, we paid that last year, and that was...
But it didn't work.
So why waste our money?
I mean, it worked. I mean, eventually, we were able to all make our picks, and there were winners and losers and all that. But there were frustrations.
I know. I'm frustrated,
Sorry,
too.
Mike. I'm sorry. And all the others that didn't get in.
I kind of feel like it's Mike's fault at this point. All the yelling that you just...
this is Yahoo's fault. This is why they got leapfrogged by Google back in the day when the interwebs were in their infancy.
That's exactly what it was.
Remember when Yahoo was Google before Google?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Just like, Alta Vista was a big deal.
Netscape.
Yeah. Well, that was a browser, but yeah.
There was also a search function in there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you chiseled out your search function in Stone Tablet and then hit send. Back in the day.
I know. We're those old people telling people how the internet was back in the day.
Well, you're an OG podcaster, so.
Yeah, so are you, buddy.
True.
All right, so the new Pick'em League, I think this is just what we're going to go with. I'm going with this right now because I told people I'd have a solution by this show. So we're just going to...
And you did good. You did good.
Just go to seahawkerspodcast.com/pick'em, and instead of whatever the number was before, now the league ID is 18,882.
Okay, I'll have to text. How do you do that again to you later? Because I still haven't signed up yet. So,
oh yeah,
I guess I'll be in that group. Are you in the first group?
I'm in the first group. I'm also in the second group because I created the second group.
Oh,
I feel like at least one person needs to Well, I have to create all the groups, so I'm going to be in all the groups. The cool thing is that okay, Yahoo has the vision to where it knows that I'm in more than one group, and it allows me to import my picks from the other group. So they've gone through to figure out the functionality that allows that to happen, but they can't just put the limit higher
or infinite. Like you just have as many as you want.
Sure.
Okay.
Do we all need to write a letter to Yahoo?
They don't accept letters. You have to write them an email.
Do we know? Is anybody in our listening audience? Do they work for Yahoo?
Or have any connections? Or at least live close enough to Yahoo to like send them a firebomb or like drop one off?
And by firebomb, I mean like a cup of coffee that you can sit down and have a nice chat and explain the situation.
No, like an ironic firebomb, like one that's like in a little package and like it like quote unquote blows up like a little tiny firework and then like zzz, and there's like a little flame that comes out, and then when people are like,
it's like the kind of firebomb that Wile E. Coyote would put together, and then when the Roadrunner comes along,
yes,
and it just kind of fizzles out.
Yeah, it's got to be from Acme, right? And yeah, and then that way they get the message, but nobody gets hurt,
right?
And that way they'll know what they did, and it'll be fine.
Well, I'm glad we cleared that up. Another thing that's cleared up is that we know where Bear wants to go with you in terms of the Seahawks, the Seahawkers podcast versus the Rams podcast bet.
Yeah.
And we got our script, so we're going to have to be recording that video coming up. But I have the suggestion from Bear. I don't know why he sent it to me and not you directly, but Bear said he wants to go straight up on passing yards, Russell Wilson versus Jared Goff.
Absolutely not.
Which has to be one of the lamest bet suggestions I've ever heard.
Brandon, say it with me.
Yards don't matter.
Yeah, no, not why would I bet on something that doesn't matter? How about passing touchdowns?
Touchdowns would be fine.
How about passing touchdowns?
Passer rating might be okay.
Pretty much any of the other stats that actually make a difference.
Right. I sent him back a message when he sent me that suggestion. I said, "Do you want to pick a stat that maybe actually matters?" I haven't heard back yet.
Yeah, passing TDs. Let's do that.
Yeah.
The Rams' high-flying offense.
Yeah. It just goes to figure. See, we've told the Rams that we're tired of coming up with the betting terms on our end every year. And so we've now...
But apparently we have to.
Apparently, because...
Like they're the Yahoo of bet propositions.
You know what we might have to do? Is we may have to, when we send them their jerseys, we may have to introduce the CJ Pro Size card to the mix before we get their jerseys in the mail. As one listener suggested in reviews, Mr. Red 2085 comes in with a 5-star review on iTunes, says, just send the cursed card to the Rams people with the jerseys, and maybe his injury problems will rub off on the Rams.
So this is an amazing suggestion, and I love where his head's at on this. But I think we take it a step further. Okay, so what I'm thinking is we subdivide the CJ Pro Size card, and we sew a little bit of it into the jersey, and then also send an anonymous envelope with a piece of it to that player.
Yes.
And it'll never get to them. Like some other person in the Rams organization will, open it.
Yeah.
But now that spirit will be in the building. I
love it, and we're doing it.
Okay. And I have I have a pretty strong vision for the video that I'm about to make. Do I know what player jersey I'm buying for Bear?
Yes, it's the Cooper Cup.
Oh, God. You mean Cup?
Yeah. Oh, and hey, speaking of subdividing things, thanks to Flocktimus Prime for registering tiny pieces of Seahawks. Tiny pieces of... I can't even say it.
It might not be the greatest marketing strategy if the website doesn't really roll off the tongue.
Tiny pieces of Seahawksstuff.com.
Yeah. Maybe with a little practice.
Yeah.
Tiny pieces of Seahawksstuff.com.
Tiny pieces of Seahawksstuff.com.
There it is.
Not tiny pieces of Seahawk stuff. Tiny pieces of Seahawksstuff.com.
Well, yeah, it's possessive.
Yeah.
But there's no apostrophe because, URLs.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And the team name is Seahawks, not Seahawk. It's plural.
Yeah. Yeah. So it'd be S apostrophe. Because it was their stuff, right?
If it were possessive, yes.
But it is possessive. It was Seahawks stuff. It was their stuff.
Is it their stuff or our stuff?
Well, now it's our stuff until we chop it up and make it somebody else's stuff. At a profit.
Tiny pieces of Seahawksstuff.com.
No apostrophe.
Nobody's going to think that there's... When have you ever put an apostrophe in as a web URL?
I don't know. It's the preseason still. Give me a break. You can bust my balls on this once week 1 starts and I go down these little stupid tangents. Like, that's when. But right now, this is all we got.
All right, we got another review. 5 stars says the pod that rocks like the LOB. This one in from Australia. And Jim's Simo 7. I love this pod. Brandon and Adam tell it how it is, even better than Cowherd. Adam can rant, but the amazing amount that he gets right should make it worth a listen. I have loved the guests that Brandon has had on when Adam was away, particularly Rob Staten of Seahawks Draft Blog. Love you guys. Go Hawks. And that's from Jeffrey Simmons because he sent in an email to follow it up. Says, love the pod. Have been a Seahawks fan since 2007 after my friend from Oregon converted me away from the Cowboys. So, see,
God, what a good friend. That's a good friend.
That's a good friend.
Like, yeah, it's like if you are on meth and then you have a friend that gets you off the meth.
Yeah.
And like changes your life. That's who this friend was to Jeffrey. And I'm really happy about that.
I have been listening the last 3 years. Love the positivity from you both compared to the rest of the American media, except when Adam goes on a rant, which he is generally correct about. I hate that. I know the media isn't giving the Hawks much confidence this year, except for maybe Peter King. I really hate getting pumped up by the media. It usually means that we're going to suck. Remember 2009 with Jim Mora, anybody? Anyway, wanted to say love the show. Also,
Jim who? No, yeah, I don't remember any of that.
That name doesn't sound
right.
I think he coached the Falcons.
Yeah, I don't recall anything like that for the Seahawks. Nope.
Also loved last year's free tipping comp on the website. Yes, total freeloader. Suck it, Adam. LOL.
That's great.
That said, I have totally left a review on iTunes. I was just wondering if you were going to make it an open tipping league again and whether you would be looking at a fantasy football league at all. I have an awesome Aussie Seahawks related name for both. Something to do with Michael Dixon. Anyway, wanted to say thanks again. You guys rock.
Dude, Jeffrey rocks. See, now he says he's a freeloader, but he did go write a review.
Yeah.
So now he's like a quasi freeloader.
Yeah. He's made a contribution, just not monetarily.
Exactly. Yeah. So we have an open podcast or a pick'em league, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not just the folks who donate.
Yeah.
I mean, those are 2 separate pick'em leagues, which will now be subdivided into like 4 pick'em leagues each.
It's just for the prizes. We give out better prizes to those people who are supporting the show.
Correct. Yeah. So, yeah, we'll definitely keep that open. As far as the fantasy league, we're not going to do one, for everyone. But if you want to get in the Ring of Honor, the folks there who, because they're amazing, they set up their own and have just made it all like go awesome because they're great.
Yeah.
I think they already had a draft, though.
They did have a draft. And Ross Bell, who's organizing it, gave himself the first pick, which is curious, but I'm not going to ask questions.
You mean Ross Goodell? How corrupt is that?
It's almost like the frozen envelope going back to the NBA draft when Patrick Ewing was selected, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm going to be watching this like a hawk, no pun intended, because I want to see, how corrupt that Ross can get with this. Like, can he go full FIFA corrupt? Do you think he can get to that level?
Ooh, that's a high bar.
I know.
I don't know. Let's see it. If he can do it, he should.
He is good. Yeah.
There's a challenge for you, Ross.
Can you be as dirty and corrupt as FIFA? Like on the inside.
Yeah. And live with yourself.
That's the key part right there, right?
Well, did you get out enough? Do you feel comfortable getting out any more on this backup quarterback situation? Because I know you and Rot Dog got into it on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we did. I think he thought we were getting into it more than I did.
Okay.
like he would say something, and then I would just say something back.
Because this stems back to our, I think it was last show where we said backup quarterbacks don't matter. Right. And Rot Dog did not like the analysis
connotation
that they don't matter when they have mattered in the past, just other teams.
Right. When we happen to disagree on the importance of the backup quarterback, somehow I feel like we probably agree on more issues than we don't. Just a guess.
But
I didn't see it as that adversarial, but I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I apparently when I write, I should check my tone. I don't know. I'm direct.
Check your tone.
I guess.
Well, when you're looking at YouTube comments, you tend to... I think that's part of the culture, is that you just look at every YouTube comment as being the strongest possible tone, and you don't take into account that maybe people are coming at it from a positive way or a not so negative way.
I mean, if you've listened, he's obviously listening to the podcast. He's heard me talk. Yeah. I mean, I'm not that serious.
Right.
I get a little pissy about things, but usually when I'm getting pissy about something. Like you'll know.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Okay.
Sorry about it. Didn't mean to, make you that mad.
Backup quarterbacks rarely matter.
Yeah, it's just what it is. I don't know.
What do you say we go on to do better and better at life?
That works for me.
My do better this week is for the NFL. We've talked about this in the past, that, just how badly does the NFL want to try and make the Rams work in Los Angeles? Because I feel in their latest effort at them,
I was going to say, have we found the limit yet?
They've sunk to a new low, at least the lowest that I've seen them go, because NFL Network has resorted to making up ridiculous quotes and attributing them to former players who I know would never say such nonsense. There is a tweet that came out this past week where they quote former Seahawks receiver Nate Burleson, and I use quote in air quotes because I know he wouldn't say this. They put the text in front of a pair of Rams players, Aqib Talib and Marcus Peters, and this alleged quote reads, "These guys are the new Legion of Boom." For one, if a pair makes up a legion and a boom is a pair of mediocre players, then I think they might have something here. But that's aside from the point that they're attributing this quote to Nate Burleson. Nate is smart. He's stylish. He's an excellent broadcaster and TV personality. So I know, Adam, that there's no way that he would say something like this, which leads me back to the idea that it's the NFL Network Twitter account and they're marching orders from Roger Goodell to keep the hype machine going around the Rams. You should be ashamed of yourselves for bringing in an upstanding guy like Nate into this. NFL Network, do better.
Now, did you vet this? Did you throw out a tweet at Nate Burleson and be like, dude, did you really say this?
I didn't have to. I know he's way better than making a quote like that.
Okay, what if he did?
Why would I have to do any vetting?
All right.
Does that sound to you like something Nate Burleson would say?
No, but I say
exactly
dumb crap all the time that I wouldn't think that I would say, but I do. I don't know. But he's better than me. So there's
Marcus Peters, the new Legion of Boom. There's no way. I don't know if Skip Bayless would say something like that, let alone Nate Burleson.
Are they even the best cornerback tandem in the league?
No.
Okay. Hard to be a new LOB. God, the NFL, it just is insufferable with this LA thing, man. It's hard to swallow.
They can be POMCB.
POMCB?
Yeah. Paramediocre cornerbacks.
So, POMCB?
Yep.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
The acronym fits about as well as you could expect from a couple of guys that, I don't know, did their defense even hold the team under 30 points last year?
Yeah, they did hold the Patriots below that, but unfortunately, they didn't score more than them still.
That's true. That's also a key to winning.
In a Super Bowl loss, an embarrassing Super Bowl loss.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just in case anybody forgot in quote unquote Rams Nation that doesn't exist.
They have more cornerbacks than they scored points in the Super Bowl.
Good point.
Yeah.
All right, man. My do better this week is not for the NFL as a whole, but one of the NFL teams, and specifically their scouting department, because, man, they really missed on a key attribute to a player that plays a certain position. And I'll explain here. The title of the article says, quarterback Kirk Cousins at wit's end dealing with center's sweaty butt. So, the Minnesota Vikings star jokingly said the team didn't scout rookie Garrett Bradbury's perspiring posterior, but his sweating is a concern. So basically, they draft this guy, and he's got sweaty ass. He's got swamp ass. That's what the problem is.
Clinical term.
Yeah. And like here's the thing. That's an important thing. You think somebody like goes around? There's got to be some sort of moisture level, like an indicator that lets you know, like, this is too much butt sweat. This is not enough butt sweat. However it is, like, there's got to be a scale, a butt sweat scale that is applied to center prospects. And what they clearly didn't do with Bradbury. And this is becoming a problem. Like throughout the preseason and through training camp, Cousins has had trouble gripping the ball, and we saw it just in preseason game number 2. There was a fumbled center exchange from swamp ass Bradbury. So to the Minnesota Vikings exposing their franchise quarterback to sweaty ass, do better.
I love the idea of having, how you have receivers run the 40 time, corners, see how fast they are, the bench press, like offensive linemen, a posterior sweat indicator at the combine, just so you can have a gauge on everybody and going into the draft process. That way, So
I think there's an easy way to like figure this out, right? Like, so basically at the combine, all the center prospects, you have them run like,
do the drills first.
One set of gassers. Yeah, whatever it is, right? Just get them going a little bit, put them through some drills, that sort of thing. And then you bring out a pet pad, that people put in their house that they let their pets like pee inside, which is gross, but whatever. Like, you put that down and the weight of the pet pad, like, as it comes new out of the box, you set that down for each and every prospect. They now sit on the pet pad, and then you measure the weight of the pet pad after the center sits down. And now you have a good measurement of swamp ass.
You've put more thought into this.
I just came up with that right now. It's not like I sat and premeditated that. Okay.
It kind of sounds like you sat and premeditated that.
No, I honestly didn't. That was off the top of my head.
Because that is genius. That's exactly how you figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, good.
So the measurement, we could call it swamp ass weight, for the weight of the sweat, and just be saw.
Saw.
So, what's the center saw measurement? Oh, that was 1.6. That's a lot, man. 1.6 pounds of saw? That's not good. It's too much saw.
If it's 1.6 pounds, that's you're carrying a load there.
Right. And apparently, Bradbury's somewhere around there. Too much saw.
You don't want to be high on the saw scale.
No. And the other thing is like, has nobody like walked up to Bradbury and been like, hey, here's this thing. It's called talcum powder. Here.
Or even, how you talk to some of the former players that teammates of a college player to find out what kind of guy he is. If you talk to the former quarterback, do you think that would come up as a flag?
You would think, but, also, Brock Heward had a problem with this at some point in his career. I can't remember which center it was. I think it was at UW. I've heard him tell the story.
Yeah.
So saw problems are, something that happens.
It's legit.
Especially think about it early in the year. You're down in Miami or something.
Oh, yeah.
And you got a saw center.
You just got to work out a shotgun.
Yep. Maybe that's why like a lot of those, old Miami teams and stuff like that, they played primarily out of the shotgun with like Dan Marino. He didn't want to deal with any saw.
No. He knew his center had a high saw level, and they addressed it.
Exactly.
All right. On to Better at Life.
My Better at Life than Skip Bayless this week is for China. And I know we're in a trade war and everything, but that's fine. But the thing is that they just took a prototype for a solar-powered plane, and it flew. It's a wingspan of like 15 meters. I don't know how long that is in feet because we're the one dumb country that doesn't use metric, but that's fine. And it can stay up in the air for like 12 hours at night before it like is powered by the sun the next day.
Oh,
8 hours of sunlight. It's ready to rock. Can just stay up there and like circle continuously. No emissions. It can be used in like disaster relief situations or more likely in a Terminator situation. But what's cool about it is that, maybe one of these days you'll be flying on a solar powered plane instead of, a bunch of, jet B fuel, like just being spewed out in the sky, creating those contrails that gives everybody cancer, because those are, it's there to suppress the people, the contrails. I don't know if you looked it up. It's a lot like Flat Earth, but it's a lot like that. In the solar power plane, you don't have those. And for China, for being innovative and doing something cool like that, Better at Life than Skip Bayless.
I feel like there's been a lot of stuff going on in the media that's kind of denigrating potential conspiracy theorists. Oh. And I don't know if I like it.
Really? How so?
With people saying that you shouldn't have a conspiracy mindset, that you shouldn't think about things and that you should believe
ask questions.
You should believe the official story that comes out every time and not question
it. That's probably not good either. So it turns out the way to be is somewhere in the middle.
It seems like there should be a middle ground here.
I can't believe that after thinking about this issue that once again we've hit on the idea of maybe the answer lies somewhere in the middle.
It might. Don't go to conspiracy on everything. But,
right.
But there's room for some questions here and there.
Right, because there have been conspiracies.
That's a fact.
Like Project MK Ultra, there's one.
Yeah, look it up. It's been declassified. Yeah.
President Kennedy didn't shoot himself. You know how I know that? I saw the tape.
Yeah. But you could just believe that there was just one shooter.
Yeah. But who motivated that shooter? Like, let's say that the one shooter theory is solid, which I'm still not sure it is. I'm not sure it isn't.
I've seen the movie JFK, and it seems like it's not solid.
Right. Well, the magic bullet, kind of disproves that. Yeah. I mean, his head goes back and to the left. Back and to the left.
It doesn't seem like it should be funny, but...
Look, leave it to me to make jokes about a presidential assassination. That's where, that's right.
That's where we're at. Yeah.
Nailed it.
I think it's the repetition that's funny, not so much the actual...
Yeah, just Kevin Costner just like hitting rewind, over and over again. Look at his head. Goes back and to the left. Back and to the left. No, one more time. Back and to the left. You know which side it doesn't go to? The right?
No.
It goes to the left.
Costner's very clear about that.
Should have ditched those dorky glasses and he probably would have gotten, better response from the jury.
You know what I don't think? I don't think Kevin Costner was the actual lawyer in that particular case.
Wait, what? Now that's a conspiracy. Who really was then? And did the government put Oliver Stone up to that movie? Oh, my God, this raises so many questions. All right, so here's the thing. I'm going to be gone from podcasting for the next 2 months.
You need to do some research.
I've got some tinfoil hats to fold, and it's going to be a good time.
Well, I had a good time this last week when John Davison sent in an email, a follow-on email. And as promised, I will be performing Mr. John Davison's email this week rather than reading it terribly like I did last episode.
Ooh, okay. I'm ready. Hey, Brandon.
Yeah,
hey, Brandon.
Yeah.
Hey, Brandon.
Hey.
Hey, Brandon. No pressure.
No pressure. Greetings, fellow hawkers. John the Bard Davison, sending ye both, most noble fellows, most grateful felicitations from ye old merry England. Forsooth, it was with much pleasure, and not a little pride, that a listener from that isle, that sceptred isle, was to be a part of a podcast with peoples from our colony many, many leagues away. It filleth me with pride that I may be a part of your merry band of troubadours. Gadzooks, I watchest the first jousting contest of the season this Sunday, and was not mightily displeased about the outcome of the tournament between the two colonial tribes. Okay, bollocks to that. I can't keep it up any longer. The thing that boils my urine is the fact that we got beat. Never mind preseason. I hate losing. What positives am I taking from it, though? I thought the O-line played well and was pleased with our new kicker. I was impressed with the wide receiver Ferguson and with Poona Ford. Disappointments were not seeing Collier and Metcalf, and thought Penny was still a work in progress. How do we half our Super Bowl odds, then? Sign Clowney. This would give everyone a massive boost, but I'm not holding my breath. Hope my cadence verily suit you, Squire Brandon. Felicitations, the Bard. P.S. Good for Russell Wilson, buying into the Sounders. Tell him to discover some good players and send them to Newcastle. We need them. Don't forget that you have the badge, and I will gladly send him one too. From John.
So was that better?
I feel like it was better.
Oh, okay, good. So a couple of things, my takeaways from that, like a few things I'm a little concerned about. Number one, I don't ever want John's urine to be boiled. That doesn't feel good. That seems bad. And I'm not sure I want felicitations from him either.
Grateful felicitations.
Yeah, grateful. Well, I mean, you should be grateful for felicitations, but yeah, you never just want to take them for granted. but
so for John Davison, for sending in that email and being so poetically written, and even though he gave up on it halfway through, but not only a Better at Life for that email, but a Better at Life nod for his grace. For while it took maybe 4 years to read his book, I'm now going to review it, because he sent both you and I, Adam, a copy of Durham Men and the Great War. And I felt like I deserved to review it on the show because it has been so long. But so I want to say to John, some things that I found interesting in this book, that because it was focused on such a small town of about 200 homes.
Because I haven't quite gotten into, is this spoilers?
I will try and keep it spoiler free.
Okay.
But and to do that, I will modify part of this. But it's focused on a small town, about 200 homes in Durham, England. One thing, and this may be a little bit spoilerish, even though it's a history book, Adam, that I found amusing was the peer pressure in this small town to join the war. And one thing that I especially enjoyed to intensify the pressure for getting people to become soldiers to join the war is how they would hand out white feathers to any of the men who hadn't served. Kind of a peer pressure moment. And people who were back from the war, they got to wear pins to show that they had served. And this got to be a big deal in the small town because the local miners felt like they should have some kind of pin, like they're working their butts off being miners and supporting the war that way, because I'm sure the medals were used for stuff for the war. And so they wanted a pin of their own to show that they were doing their part. And this got to be kind of controversial. So I enjoyed reading about the faithful Durhams, so I'm going to leave that part spoiler free for you. But I will say that John's humor was present throughout, particularly in that I could hear the tones of John in the and so in the appropriate parts, of course, and that's probably where it jumped out to me the most. And there was even a sports tie-in for the book, Adam, because he detailed the fundraising efforts for the war, where the ladies put together soccer matches. So, see, even for those looking for a sports tie-in with the Great War. And the reason why I'm giving John Better at Life for this is the last chapter of his book is what I found really admirable. He detailed his efforts to do the research for the book, so anyone else looking to write something similar down the road they could use his methods and take some of the guesswork out of who to contact and where to look for certain types of information. So, John Davison, for a great email and for a great book, better at life than Skip Bayless.
Yeah, man, there's no arguing with that.
And now he can use that quote for the cover of his next book.
Ooh, I like it. Yeah. That's pretty good. That's basically a New York Times review. That was actually a very thoughtful review.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
It was deserved after taking so long.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I finished the book on my trip back, and now it's your turn.
It is. I'll have to fly somewhere instead of drive.
I win, you lose. I finished it before you did. I declare myself the winner.
Well, that's fine. Unfortunately, my review is going to be better than yours. So.
With that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.